like Pokemon. Pokemon is very cool. And I decided that I was going to have a go at making my own Pokemon. And so I've been doing that. Over the last few weeks, I've been getting into making my own Pokemon game. And during this, I've learned to make pixel art. And I want to teach you how I learned. I learned this all by myself through trial and error. And I am definitely a lot better than how I used to be. And that means I'm definitely going to go back and remake some of my old sprites. Because they're bad. But this is the process of how I make my own sprites. Just as a disclaimer before we start, this is not a beginner tutorial on how to use Paint.net or any editing software. This is a tutorial on how to sprite, how to make Pokemon sprites. So if you're expecting me to teach you, hey, this is how you use Paint.net, you're at the wrong video. I'm just going to go into this and presume you already know how to use Paint.net, and you know all the tools, and you know all the everything, and you know everything about how the thing works. So don't expect me to teach you how to use the software, because that's not what this video is about. This video is about spriting, not about how to use the software. But with that being said, let's begin. This is how I make my Pokemon sprites. So the first thing I like to do before I make a sprite is go and get all of the sprite sheets of the Pokemon off of the Sprites resource. I'll put a link to that in the description. I usually get the static Pokemon and the parts. This will make sense why later. Now the next thing I want to do is find a Pokemon with the right body shape. Now what does this mean, you may ask? Well, if you're trying to make a Pokemon that is a bug type and you want it to be a spider, you're going to want to look for Pokemon like Ariados or Galvantula, or Pokemon that have that body type. I want to try and make a dragon type legendary Pokemon, so I'm going to try and look for some beefy, strong body shape. Which is ironic because the Pokemon I ended up going with was Slowbro, which is a little bit weird because he's not a dragon. I took away all the parts of Slowbro that would identify it as Slowbro. So I took away the eyes, ears, mouth, arms, tail, the whole lot, until I'm basically left with a blob with legs. You may actually have noticed that in order to do this, I used the parts, because some of the parts of Slowbro would be a lot easier to just take the part, put it back on the Pokemon, rather than completely redrawing the whole thing, like with the leg right here. I then went and removed all the colour from the sprite, so we're just left with the base line art. I feel like the reason that this works so well is that no one would look at that and say, hey, that's actually Slowbro's body. That is a hint, don't just take a Pokemon's body and just remove the colour. Actually change it, remove the parts that define it as a different Pokemon. Now here's one of the more challenging parts. Hands and feet. This is hard, and that's why I recommend to use this method. Because if you don't use this method, you're stuck with drawing those hands and feet, and that won't work all the time, because they are very, very hard. So that means that you need to find a Pokemon that has the same feet as your Pokemon, and then change it so that way it isn't traceable back. Not that it will be traceable back, because no Pokemon really has defining feet. My main tip for this is go for the Pokemon with the right posture, not the right proximity. If that makes any sense. I'll try and explain it. If you go with a Pokemon that has the right posture, you can easily just change it and make it so that it's more bulky or less bulky, depending on what you want for your Pokemon. However, if you go for a Pokemon that has the right body bulk or whatever you want, it's going to be a lot harder for you, because it may or may not fit with the Pokemon sprite that you're trying to make. So if you just go with the Pokemon that has the right arm or has the right foot in the positioning, it'll be a lot easier and you'll have a lot more fun making your Pokemon sprite. This part will take the most tweaks and the most changes out of any part. The head. The head, for the most part, is the most defining part of a Pokemon's character. So you have to make sure you get this right for your Pokemon, because if you don't, you have a bland, boring Pokemon or a clone Pokemon, which you really don't want. You'll need to mix and match loads of different Pokemon parts. So for example, I'm going with Tyranitar's base head, but it's not going to be Tyranitar, because I'm actually changing it, I'm making it different. So basically the only thing I'm taking away from Tyranitar is the back spikes on his head. The next part is the tail. This is pretty straightforward, considering a lot of Pokemon have tails, and they're all in different positions. There's so many tails that you can choose from. Mix and match them, and try and make them posed in the way that you want them. I went with Tyranitar's front bit of the tail. What is the anatomy of a tail? And I went with Aggron for the tip of the tail. This all worked for me smoothly. However, if you're making something like a snake Pokemon, it'll probably be a lot harder to have it not trace back because of how simple the design of snakes are. I then went back to the head and cleaned up a few things before adding the defining features of the Pokemon that I'm trying to make. I then added the muzzle, which I drew on myself. I just felt like it was going to be a lot easier to draw on the muzzle myself, rather than to try and find the Pokemon that has the muzzle that I want. Muzzle, snout, what's the right word? Mouth? I don't know. Now here comes the wings. This may be tricky for you if you're making a dragon like me, because you need to find a dragon that has the right wings. That's not a thing really in Pokemon. All the dragon types have really different wings that will easily be traced back to thinking, hey, that's Salamon's wings, hey, those are Dragonite's wings. It's going to be very difficult for you. So I opted into drawing them instead, which was pretty difficult considering I do this all with a mouse. It took a bit of time, a little bit of tweaking, but in the end I think I ended up making them look right. My tip for this is really just to draw the basic dragon wing shape in the posture of the Pokemon you're trying to make, then tweak the parts that you think look a little bit off. I then came to a realization that may or may not happen with your Pokemon. This looks a bit like Dragonite, and I didn't want to go back on this design. I really liked it. So I opted into making a Mega Dragonite. Yes, I know that the Mega Stone for Dragonite would be Dragonite, and that's why they didn't give it a Mega Evolution, but shut up, alright? I don't know why. I realised that after I made the sprite and it's too late to go change it. I'll figure something out. This is why I never design a Pokemon without a plan to begin with. If I have something in mind, it's a lot easier to make a Pokemon sprite, but once I try and freestyle, it ends up being something different to what I originally planned. I then took all the features from Dragonite and put them onto the Mega, because that's what Megas are supposed to do. Make the Pokemon cooler. And if it doesn't look like the Pokemon, I can't make it the Mega of that Pokemon. Here comes the colorization. This is probably the easiest and the most fun part of making a Pokemon sprite. You basically get to give the Pokemon character. You get to make it what you want it to be. And this is the final step to making a Pokemon sprite. If you're making a Mega or like an alternate form for an already existing Pokemon, this process is going to be a lot easier for you, because you can just take the colours from that Pokemon and slap them onto your Pokemon. However, if you're making an original Pokemon, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. However, it shouldn't be too bad, considering you can just go and get a Pokemon that has the same colours, use their colours, and put it on the Pokemon. My tip for this is really just, well, colour the Pokemon. I added a few more details after this, such as a little whisker eyebrow thing that I don't know what it is. Whatever this thing the Dragonite has, as well as tweaking a few things on the wing. The next part is the shading. This part's going to take some explanation. Think of the sprite as someone on stage. Spotlight on them. This specific spotlight is at the top left corner of the sprite. The sprite will be darker the further away it is to this spotlight, and it will be darker if something is in the front of part of its body. Take that into consideration and try and sprite your Pokemon just like that. Shade the parts of the body that are further away from the light. Put shadows on the far right edges of the sprite. So if you are confused, it's best to just look at what I'm doing instead of listen to what I'm explaining. Also, instead of having a black line art on the further left of each body part, try and use one of the darker of the body colour. This will make it look like the light is on the top left. Also, if this is an extended evolution, mega evolution, regional form, whatever you're going for, if it has to do with an original Pokemon, look at that Pokemon sprite. Look at its shading. What has the sprite done to show the shading on that Pokemon? Try and implement some of the tricks that you noticed into your own art. And that should be it. You have just made your own Pokémon sprite. I will probably make another video talking about how you can put this into Pokémon Essentials, talking about how you can make your own Pokémon, and I hope this video helped. Whether it's you making your own Pokémon game, you helping someone else out with their Pokémon game, for whatever reason you needed this sprite, I hope it helped. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please hit the like button or possibly share with a friend if you think they'll be interested in making their own Pokémon sprite. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell, and until next time, goodbye.